All right, everybody. Do this real fast here to try and get us caught up a little bit. We're in the middle of the Industrial Revolution. And the Industrial Revolution causing the rural to urban migration, the building of new cities all over the place, is going to change the traditional family structure as well. Families throughout world history have mainly taught and worked together. As we were joking around with Alyssa in third period, that if I'm a member of the Cheesemakers Guild, I'm going to teach my children how to make cheese, Coleman cheese. I think Megan was making cheese. I forget who else. I think maybe it was Jake and Zeno. Everybody's making cheese. So we teach our children how to do our job right along with us. Work life and family life are deeply intertwined. The mom and dad would teach their children their necessary job skills. However, now that the Industrial Revolution has happened, dad at first is transferred from the home. He will be separated for many hours each day. Maybe if it's a 12-hour work day, plus you have commuting time to and from work, dads just simply aren't there. And by the mid-1830s, most textile production was done in a factory run by machinery. So no longer do we need skilled laborers. Once again, think of Charlie Bucket's dad in the new Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. His dad was to screw toothpaste tube caps on. Well, now that I get a machine to do that, I no longer need that individual. Like going out in California right now, they have automatic burger flippers at fast food restaurants where a robot is flipping the hamburgers, not a human being. When you are unskilled labor, you are subject to the whims of what is happening. Machines make sure that workers have little or no skill. It doesn't take, if a machine can do your job and you have no skills, you are going to lose your job. Like my friend Bob, who was running the impact wrench, right? Running machines, we don't need skill, we just need labor. And if we just need labor, we can pay you a cheaper price. So if father's gone at the factory up to 12 hours each day, children were no longer receiving their education at home. And mothers are going to have to do the work of both parents. They've got to do the mom's job and the father's job at the same time. Now, children, as we all know, are going to be sent to schools as well, or not to schools, to factories as well. The more workers the household has, the more money they can make. We're not teaching them how to make cheese. They're going to go to the factory and do small jobs with dad. And so we have the plight of child labor as something that has been well documented in the Industrial Revolution. We're going to do a DBQ on it here soon. But since the children were no longer being taught by their parents, discipline and education will be transferred to the workplace with the straw boss, the line boss, or to the schools. God, what would it be like if we could actually discipline students in this modern world where rules are great until they apply to our own children? And because of this plight of child labor, England will pass the English Factory Act of 1835. All right? You got this little kid standing here on this machine, maybe you can't see it with the lights on there, rolling, cotton or wool into, rolls of yarn, like your grandma knitting an Afghan. If you get your hand or your finger caught in the pulley or the belt, well, that's okay. We'll go get another little kid tomorrow. So what the English Factory Act does is going to mandate that children cannot work more than an 8-hour day. Now you guys sit here and cry and moan that you've got to go to school 7, 8 hours a day. You do 6, maybe 7 classes with a lunch period. Well, how about you be one of these kids? You go and do your job for 8 hours, then after that is done, you've got to go to school. You've got to go to class for 2 more hours. Now, this education will be paid for by the factory, but you got to work for 10 hours. Now, there are some positives to this, as you can see, and we got to say that not all children had to work full-time and in factories. Fathers with good jobs that were managers or did require some skill were making more money as factory workers than they were as farmers and maybe even cheesemakers. So now kids don't have to go to work at a young age. They're not out gathering eggs in the morning and slopping the hogs and cleaning out stalls. Some of these children are actually able to go to where? A place you guys dread and hate each day. They get to go to school and do a crazy thing like learn. So it wasn't bad for everybody. Same goes for women, and women are going to be interesting here. Women are going to experience positives and negatives during the Industrial Revolution. In some cases, the father, the dad, families were able to live on the wage of the factory worker father, like my friend Bob. This allows for everyone else to have different roles. If we've got enough money with only one of us going to work, well then that's awesome. But what this will do is it'll allow like 1950s stereotypical gender roles to develop as mothers become linked with the home and being housewives. For middle class and upper class women, their job was to support the family, to make sure the family was okay, that the husband got off to work and the kids got off to school. Man, it'd be a great job if I could do that. Right? And so it was mom's job to create a welcoming home environment. Now, back in the old days, you got off the bus from a hard day at school and mom would give you a little break. You'd get like Kool-Aid, or chocolate chip cookies. Nowadays, you guys call that cancer water and processed sugars. Oh my God! So here in Chapel Hill, you guys will get sea salted kale chips and Fiji tri-filtered water. When you get off the bus and you decompress and do something, here's some kale chips and a gluten-free shake and tri-filtered water or whatever. But mom is happy and mom is smiling as you get your kale chips and your Fiji water. Welcome home. Oh, I've missed you, and you can relax a little bit, maybe watch a TV show, do something fun before going to do your homework. Mom sets that tone. In the Industrial Revolution, that's what she was doing. When the husband would come home from work, hey dear, how was your day? What was going on? Dinner is ready, the kids are clean, and all that work was done. It sounds kind of demeaning, but it was an important job. What's the old saying? If mom isn't happy, the entire house isn't happy. And here's something strange, it's kind of funny, but with the dad gone, mom now becomes in charge of the household finances, and it's a bit of empowerment. Mom went to the bank, mom paid the bills, mom balanced the checkbook. Mom made sure everything ran. My wife's the same way. My job is to work. I open the cupboard and poof, it's like Hogwarts elves have done stuff. Whoa, all right. My wife went shopping. It was a very important role when everybody else is busting their butt, working 8 hours a day and then going to school 10 hours a day, and the husband working 12 to 14 hours a day. It was an essential role, but it does kind of sequester women into those gender roles. But it does come with a little bit of empowerment never before seen in world history. And for young ladies, the beginning of a wage economy where you're working in a factory and you're paid cash, this allows you to have more choices than ever before. All right, that's Japan. We'll get there next. For the first time ever, a young lady had an option, believe it or not, of whom she was going to marry. She didn't have to marry the neighboring farmer's son or the friends of her mom and dad's son. The young lady could move. A girl born in the countryside could go and live in the city. And a lot of the factories had dormitories that were supervised, and a young lady could earn enough money for her own dowry. And a dowry is a gift of money that the bride's father would pay to the groom's family. Well, now if I'm making my own money, by God, I get to actually choose who I can marry. I'm not stuck with the farmer's son. And this gives a woman a greater sense of choice. However, on the negative side of this, women who did work in low-skill factory jobs were often exploited. People knew that many of these women didn't have enough money to get back home. So they were stuck. So women had to work in sweatshops under miserable conditions. They were subject to lower pay and horrible working conditions, and a lot of times even harassment, hashtag time's up, even sexual harassment, because they had nowhere else to go. They were trapped, and they would work longer hours, like the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory and things of that nature, under horrible conditions, where we're going to lock you in a room and we're going to shut the windows and it'll be 100 degrees and we're going to lock it, and if a fire breaks out, well, you're not going to be able to get out in time. But hey, at least you have a job and you've got money that you can make. But a lot of these women had no protection whatsoever. But for some, they finally get a choice. And while the family unit does not disappear entirely, family ties were loosened. Money, cash money, can now be sent and transferred over long distances, from factory and bank branch in the city to the bank out in the country. Children began to move away from home. Think about you guys who raised our hands. I live 660 miles from my parents, and my wife lives 900. All right, we're nowhere near where we grew up because of jobs. It's going to loosen those family ties. Now, a lot of people where I'm from have what I call the Northeast Ohio death mentality. They refuse to leave. Like my two sisters live 3 miles and 5 miles from my mom and dad. All right, but a lot of people look at your parents, how many times they have, moved and traveled around and gotten better jobs. Some people choose not to leave, but a lot of people do. They go on looking for opportunities and jobs, and it starts back in the Industrial Revolution. I will go to where there is a job. Some of your grandparents who were immigrants, they left family members back home in Europe just so they could get here and get a job and send money back to later bring them over. So while the family unit doesn't disappear, it begins to slowly spread itself out. Children will move away from home to make money. They will be on their own, away from that safety net. And all of this is due to industrialization. So tomorrow we'll talk about the two opposites, Adam Smith and Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, and start talking about a little bit of imperialism. We're going to go out and take stuff over simply because we can. Alrighty guys, I hope that was fast enough for you, and I will see you tomorrow.